Minneapolis is back in the news. Many of us thought we were kind of be done talking about Minneapolis after we just went through the entire George Floyd, Derek Chauvin trial that lasted a long time. We spent a lot of time talking about it, and the country is just kind of exhausted. We've been dealing with a lot of justice reform issues, a lot of animosity here between different demographics, different groups, law enforcement agencies. We're seeing these protests take place around the country. We're seeing people die on both sides of the equation, and people are just kind of hopeful that maybe we can move beyond it. Derek Chauvin got convicted. A lot of people feel that was a justified verdict. And now's an opportunity to put all this behind us. Maybe we can have a little bit of healing now. Well, of course, that's not going to happen, because in Minneapolis now, we've got 2 new dead people that unfortunately were killed. And we have to talk about what the hell happened again. So this is going to continue to happen. And it's becoming very irritating that we have to continue to talk about this. So here we have another situation, again, developing out of Minneapolis. They have 100 National Guardsmen now on standby as new gun evidence emerges in the Winston Smith shooting. Now, there is not a lot of information about this, but the Minnesota National Guard activated 100 soldiers. Now, that's really not that much when you sort of think about it, but 100 soldiers on Wednesday, they're getting prepped up. And I'm sure the reserves are now on standby, that there is civil unrest in Minneapolis. There are demonstrations that are continuing, started last week, involving the shooting of Winston Boogie Smith Jr. Okay, U.S. Marshals task force came out, and there was another recent death of a woman who was killed when a man rammed his SUV into a group of the protesters blocking an intersection. And so we've just talked about this so much. It's this domino effect. Something happens with the police, the protesters come out, then oftentimes the government itself is sort of negligent in removing the protesters, or they're overly aggressive in removing the protesters, and there's more unrest happens. And this has been going on in Minneapolis for well over a year now. We're now in June, and George Floyd was killed back in May of 2020. And so the protests have been happening for a full year. They're still going on again. And we have, again, two more dead people now as a result of this unrest that continues to take place. And we've got, a bunch of politicians around. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, National Guard. We've got a lot of people who are trying to solve this problem, and nobody can quite figure it out. Governor Tim Walz announced on Wednesday that his office, at the request of the mayor, Jacob Frey, gave the National Guard a warning order. Start preparing to assist local law enforcement should they need the help, they said in a letter. National Guard has not yet been giving any operational orders, and as of this time, their assistance has not been needed. The Guard tweeted Wednesday afternoon, approximately 100 soldiers from the 257th Military Police Academy have been activated at the request of the city for potential support to civil unrest within the city. Follow-up tweet added, while the soldiers are not currently in Minneapolis, they are standing by and prepared if their presence is needed. So what happened in this case? So here we have Winston Smith Jr. Okay, now, why were the U.S. Marshals involved? So we see here that the U.S. Marshals were executing a task force. Why were they there? Well, so they're the enforcement arm of the federal courts. We know this here. Ashley Hackett over at the Minnesota Post put this together. And so they've captured some of America's most wanted fugitives and all of this stuff. Let's see, drug possession, low-level suspects, and on and on and on. According to the information currently available, U.S. Marshals were involved in Smith's case. He had been convicted of a violent felony in the past, and he had a warrant out for illegal possession of a firearm. So it's a good thing they went and got him, because he was an outstanding felon and had a warrant out, right? So it's a good thing that this all happened because of an outstanding warrant. That's great. So Smith was convicted in 2017, assault and robbery, ex-girlfriend, sentenced 2 years in prison. Sentence was stayed for 3 years, provided he didn't break the law. In most cases, federal law bans those who have been convicted of felonies from possessing firearms. Right. It's called a prohibited possessor. Unless you're in Missouri, apparently. Smith was also charged in Ramsey County with illegally possessing a firearm in 2019, charged with fleeing the police in Hennepin County last year. So in Minnesota, U.S. Marshals then are responsible for Smith's death. They called the North Star Fugitive Task Force. The U.S. Attorney's Office says the task force includes a number of people to arrest the state's most violent fugitives. So we're going to see what happens here. But according to a preliminary investigation, BCA, it's probably the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, said that at one point, a Hennepin County Sheriff's deputy and a Ramsey County Sheriff's deputy serving on the task force discharged their weapons, striking the man. No official statements have confirmed whether the U.S. Marshals officers fired shots during the attempted arrest. right? So basically zero information again, which is really the most frustrating part of all of these killings and shootings that take place. So here is some information. Now, this is the U.S. Marshals, right? So they're not going to tell you anything. But here is somebody posted this. They said, let me see if I can clear this up. We got Mayor Moose Knuckle over there is catching so much heat. Eight unmarked cars boxed Winston Smith in after tracking him via Snapchat all morning. So they didn't arrest him outside his vehicle in the garage or anywhere else. They waited until he was inside, and then they swarmed, right? And so this type of stuff happens frequently. You know, I don't know what happened here, so it's, of course, too early to be speculative here, but we'll see what ends up happening. You know, these situations, most times, the reason I get agitated about these cases is because in most of the cases, I could be wrong here. If it turns out this guy, you know, is firing off an Uzi at them, I'll come here and eat my words. I don't have a dog in the fight. I just want to see police, you know, policing reasonably, let's say. They are constantly conducting high-risk maneuvers for low-level petty stuff that I just don't think is worth it, right? The same thing that happened with Dante Wright. They're conducting these warrant arrests and all these things, and people get killed as a result of it. And now somebody else is going to get killed, and Minneapolis is going to be in a lot of hot water again. So Crime Watch Minneapolis, again, over on Twitter, said that the police moved in, and there were some protests taking place about 15 hours ago. So the police are going in, they're firing off projectiles, and some arrests are being executed. So law enforcement is out there now, sort of rounding people up. There was afterwards, this is what we see. So back on Minneapolis, right in Minneapolis on this street, we've got new communities sort of building up. People are mourning the loss of Winston Smith, and somebody else was killed shortly thereafter. So next up we're going to look at Deona Marie, right? Another woman who was killed because of this continued unrest that is taking place. We're going to talk about her here in a minute. Here's what the scene looks like. Not as many people as maybe you would have seen for a George Floyd rally, right? I don't know if people still have the energy anymore, but of course there's a lot, there's a lot of people out there. Now, let's go back to the guardsman story. If the guardsmen are brought into Minneapolis, police chief requested that they be assigned to teams with law enforcement officers and concentrate on property protection details and static traffic posts. In a letter that was addressed earlier, state officers, they've maintained communication about ongoing peaceful protest and potential civil unrest. They say, "It is my request that the state make Minnesota National Guard assets available to ensure calm and order throughout the city without being deployed. Preparedness is essential." City asked for the National Guard at least 5 times since the death of George Floyd. Latest request comes as protesters and city officials compete for control of the intersection of Lake Street and Hennepin Avenue in Uptown. City crews have repeatedly cleared the area, but each time the protesters have moved back in after the police leave, they want the area to remain closed to traffic, as has occurred at the site of Floyd's death, downtown by Cup Foods. It's come to known as George Floyd Square. So why are they setting up at that intersection? Well, because of this gal. Now, Ben Crump is sort of just chomping at the bit. I think he just sort of just sits around and waits for these stories and just updates his Twitter all day. But he posted this. This is her. This is Deona Knajdek. Okay, she was killed 3 days before her 32nd birthday. She was protesting the fatal police shooting of Winston Smith when another driver accelerated into her and others. Okay, due to this malicious act, another family must now cope with the sudden loss of their loved one. So this is the story now. Late on Sunday, her name is Deona Knajdek Erickson, killed after a man rammed his SUV into a group of protesters. Vehicles parked to block off the nearby intersection. Driver, 35-year-old Nicholas Kraus, was charged with second-degree unpremeditated murder. Been in custody since early Monday. Police said protesters initially pulled him out of the vehicle and beat him. His motive remains unclear, though the Minneapolis police said that alcohol and drugs may have been contributing factors. They're calling him a white supremacist. We don't know if that's accurate or not yet. A search warrant also said that Kraus admitted to being the driver, gave illogical, irrelevant answers, telling police that his name was Jesus Christ and Tim Burton. Been a carpenter for 2,000 years. He could be a crazy person, right? Who knows? Document obtained by KARE said security footage showed no brake lights as Kraus approached the intersection, has 5 convictions for driving under the influence dating back to 2007, according to court records. His driver's license was canceled. So, okay. So they're going to be protesting that. They are protesting that. I've seen on Twitter already today that, they're calling him a white supremacist. Sounds like he's a crazy person, but All right, here's a scene. Here's what the scene looks like from where the accident occurred that resulted in another dead person in our cities. We have what looks like to be some pretty serious damage, right? This was the intersection, so it's now cordoned off. This was the driver. Looks like the front of his car is jammed up. This car looks like it may have had an impact. Those tires look blown down there. Let's see what else, right? So that car tires are down there. Looks like an impact here. Looks like the airbags went off on that one. So this guy's airbags, I think those may have gone off. Front is mashed up there. Cops taking a load off over here. We've got, yeah, so this is where the protest was. See, Winston is written down here. How many? We've got Free America. All right, so let's take a look at some questions. What do we have coming in here hot from watchingthewatchers.locals.com? We got Farmer's Daughters here. Says, to expand on Jeremy's comments, I have no doubt we are all in awe and inspiration how much you give of yourself. As to the need comment, first of all, thank you for that, Farmer's Daughter. As to the need comment, my father's favorite saying was when we wanted something he didn't want to get us, like a horse. His response was, my job as a parent is to make sure you have everything you need, not everything you want. He was a great father in that regard, but I never did get a horse. LOL, yeah. Thank you for that, Farmer's Daughter. That's a nice story. I think that's a good point, right? There's certain, I think, sort of baselines that we try to adhere to. It sounds like your father had some good wisdom there, right? And I think there's a lot of value in not giving people everything they want, especially kids. A lot of the best lessons I ever got was somebody telling me I'm not going to give that to you, right? Or the better lessons, you can't get that. You can't have that. Because what does that make you do? Want to go get it and work pretty hard to do so. So I really do appreciate that. I mean, it means a lot. I have a lot of fun spending time here with you, and I have just a lot that I want to do. One of the things that I try to work on regularly is sort of relax a little bit. I have a business coach that I work with, and he's constantly telling me, hey, you don't have to fight for everything. Just take it easy, relax a little bit. Because it's sort of in my DNA. It's why I wanted to be a defense lawyer at some point, because I like to fight and I like to, go out there and get after it. So sometimes when I'm sort of resting a little bit, I'm feeling like I should be working, and I got to just calm down a little bit. So, I think people talk about balance. I really don't like that concept of having balance, but there is, I think, a little bit more focused, intentional rest could be useful. Probably for you too. I talk a lot about myself here, but maybe a little intentional rest would be good for all of us. Maybe society could use a little bit of that, because we've all been through the ringer on this one. We have been through a lot, whether you know it or not. I mean, many people I think we're looking back at 2020 like they had the year off, and maybe it wasn't that big of a deal for them. For many people, I think it was a very catastrophic year. And I think even those people who kind of think that it wasn't that big of a deal, I think they don't really know what the long-lasting consequences of that may ultimately be. And so I think it's a good time for all of us to pause and just reflect a little bit. All right, next up, enough of that. We got Sarah Smothers says, how is it that the left can both be supporting a criminal who broke gun laws and yet still want more gun control laws at the same time? I know a life was lost that shouldn't have been, but letting him leave was the best option. How can you enforce gun control laws if you let offenders leave the scene? Well, so it's a great point, Sarah. I totally understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you to some degree. I think the real question that this is getting at is sort of, or at least where I have my distinctions here, is based on the methodology that they use when they're when they're executing these warrants and arrests. Right? They tend to do them in sort of these high stakes situations where they've got 20 officers, they all come in, they say, there he is, and we crash down upon him on the roof of a parking lot. When there are other ways that you can do this stuff. There are ways that don't involve coming in guns blazing all the time. But unfortunately, that happens a lot, right? And the reason that I get irritated about it is because we talk a lot about the stories like this. Like the Breonna Taylor case is a great example of that, right? They just sort of busted in, something happened, guns go off, blazing all over the place, dead girl now. And we're just going, is there a better way to go about this? Do you have to just go in hot all the time? Because it feels like they are. And I think that this is where a lot of people have some disagreements about this. I don't want dangerous people flying around society. I don't want people going out there, committing dangerous, violent gun offenses. It doesn't serve me living in that society. People think that because I'm a defense lawyer, it's like I endorse criminality. I don't want it to be Mad Max Road Warrior out there at all, right? I got to live in the same society myself. But I just want the government to sort of, prioritize life over an arrest. That's all. And I'm not saying that the officers in this case didn't do that. Maybe they did. A lot hasn't come out. But the other issue that I have with this stuff is this happened back on June 7th. We may never know what the hell happened. This is what the feds, U.S. Marshals, they give us a blurb. We had a deputy from Hennepin County who may have fired his weapon. Oh, great. Thanks, guys. Good job. Okay. And part of my other concern with all of these, it's like, listen, if the government wants people to be reasonable, they got to be reasonable with us back. There's a bunch of people out there protesting because they think the government just did something bad by shooting and killing Winston Smith. If they had a rapid response team and they said, hey, listen, we warned him 50 times. We were surrounding his car. He had a gun up in the air. He started shooting back at us or whatever. And they release that. They have a rapid response team and we all get the picture. We all go, oh, all right, okay, you're right. Remember that same thing happened with Micaiah Bryant, the 17-year-old girl who was shot and killed. Okay, everybody started losing their minds over that one. Oh, another white cop shoots another, young black girl. She's dead. And lo and behold, they released the body camera footage immediately. She was lunging at somebody with a knife. I mean, inches away from stabbing and right in the throat or neck or whatever the chest area was. So it's like, okay, so we just, respond. It's accountability and transparency. Open up. What happened here? If you said that nothing went wrong, what happened? Because they just shut their mouths. They put everything behind closed doors. The people don't know any better. They go out there, they start protesting. You have some lunatic who drives over somebody. We have another dead person. Minneapolis, that whole city has just been under, wreckage. There's a lot of very good people there who probably are tired of this, right? And their lives are being destroyed from this continued unrest that is largely at the hands of our incompetent government and law enforcement agencies that continue to execute these high-risk maneuvers. And I'm just tired of seeing it. I mean, I'm just that's what it comes down to. The whole thing could come out later down the road. Everything was done by the book, and I'm ranting about nothing because we don't know anything about the story. It could just be, that the whole thing was perfectly fine. But my point, we've seen enough of this that there starts to become a pattern that you can just sort of predict it. And if they start calling in National Guard, 100 of those people coming in now and going, oh, great. Here we go again. So we'll see where it goes. But I do understand your point, Sarah, right? We do want a safe society. I agree with you that we don't want, violent gun criminal maniacs running around society. But I just think that we may have a difference of opinion about what we do or how we go about making sure that those people don't become, harmful to society. Ultimately, we both want the same outcome. It's just a question about how we get there. I think. Great question, though. Thank you for that. We have Nadarb says, wait a minute. How did he possibly drive if he didn't have a license? That's a good question, man. I mean, did he have too many points on his license? It sounded like he had a lot of points on his license. So it's a good question. It's illegal to drive if you have too many points on your license, All right, those were great questions. All of those came over from watching thewatchers.locals.com. I want to thank everybody for all of your support over there. I want to welcome a couple newcomers to the show, to the community. We've got Allie Joe is in the house now. Welcome, Allie. Grateful to have you here at our community. We've got M. Burke 007 is in the house, which I guess sounds like he's ready for some business. So James Bond is here now over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you very much, both of you, for signing up. A lot of good stuff over there. If you have not already checked that out, you can go over there and take a look at our whole slew of documents over there. Nope, we're going to go there. We've got the slides that are available to download. You can download a copy of my book, Impeachment Party Documents, also available there. Existence Systems template is available to download. We got links. We've got great people over there. We've got a Zoom meetup that is coming up on June 26th. So register. Well, you can go over here and sign up. Register at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It is free if you are over there. And a couple other quick plugs. Of course, we've got some info products that you can go and take a look at if you want to stay connected and learn a little bit more about other things like how to deal with law enforcement. Would love it if you check this course out. And if you are somebody who already went through it, Would really very much appreciate a review down there. If you're interested in personal productivity, there is an Existence Systems. If you're a lawyer or a legal professional, definitely come give this course a look at. It's not a course, it's a community. We do a legal mastermind. We meet twice a month, talk about being better lawyers and building better practices so that we can do better in society. And I would invite you to come check that out. Lastly, but not leastly, I am a criminal defense lawyer here at the R&R Law Group. And so if you know anybody who has been charged with a crime in the state of Arizona, we would appreciate a referral our direction. We can help with anything and everything that involves the law. Being in trouble with the law, specifically criminal law. That means things like drug charges, domestic violence, DUIs, even traffic tickets. We have a lot of criminal traffic violations in the state of Arizona that are, in fact, quite serious. So if you need some help or you know anybody that might, we would be honored and humbled if you sent them our direction. We love the opportunity to help good people find safety, clarity, and hope in their criminal cases and beyond that in their lives. We'd very much appreciate it. Anybody you sent our way, we'll make sure we take very good care of them. And that, my friends, is it for me today. Want to thank you for joining us. We're going to be back here same time, same place tomorrow. Going to be at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on that East Coast for that one Florida man out there. And everybody else, be well tonight. Sleep very well. Have a hearty dinner because we're going to be ready to go tomorrow. I'll see you then. Have a great evening. Bye-bye, everybody.